Hey guys, if you are watching this, it is because things did not go well over the weekend with my grandpa. He had a pretty rough go of it, and he has either passed or he's very, very close at this point. So just kind of bear with me here. If I go too quick as we go through, just tell the sub to pause. And as always, I will post the notes on Wednesday, the student version. So if you miss anything, make sure that you grab those. Already have printed out for you and ready to go your diagram packet. So make sure that the sub has passed those out. Follow along with any of those diagrams as I kind of explain them and go through them. And we'll just kind of make this work the best that we can. So um, chapters 8 and 9 are both on the nervous system. Chapter 8 focuses more on the peripheral nerves and just kind of the basics of what is a neuron and those kinds of things. So we'll be talking more about the overall nervous system, not necessarily the brain. Chapter 9 focuses more explicitly on brain anatomy, and you guys will do your sheep brain dissection and all of that with that chapter. So this is more, what's the difference between the autonomic nervous system and things that are involuntarily controlled versus things that are voluntarily controlled, etc. So um, that is our main focus this week. So when we look at functions of the nervous system, you guys will see several similarities as we go through, as I start to kind of explain the junctions and how our neurons work and everything. You'll see a lot of similarities between this and muscles, okay, especially when we were talking about the neuromuscular junction and how that works, and neurotransmitters are traveling between synaptic clefts and all of that. So hopefully this will make some sense to you guys when looking at the actual functions of the nervous system. So these top three bullet points should ring a bell. We've already talked about these in kind of other scenarios. So we have our sensory input, where our sensory receptors are going to respond to stimulus, right? So we've talked about a couple of times now the example of, putting your hands on a hot stove or whatever, and you didn't know that it was hot. Okay, you have those sensory receptors that are, in the skin. So that's going to send a signal to the muscle, eventually telling you, hey, move your hand, it's hot. So the sensory input is going to sense that. Then we have an integration neuron, and this is going to connect your sensory neuron to your motor neuron. So most of the time, these are going to be found in either the brain or the spinal cord. So think more kind of the central nervous system. This is where it's going to get the actual instruction to do whatever the motor response is going to be. Okay, so that motor response is move the hand. Okay, ow, it's hot, move your hand, respond to whatever that stimulus is. So those are three very incredibly important functions of the nervous system, and you'll kind of see that over and over throughout this chapter. Obviously, other functions then with the nervous system, mental capabilities, whether it is involuntary, our heart is still beating and we're breathing, and all of these things that our body's doing that we don't have to think about. Versus, you sitting here right now taking notes, voluntarily writing something down. So that takes a different type of mental capacity to do that. So we'll talk about that more when we get to the brain, chapter 9, but we'll kind of touch on that in this chapter as well. And then we've got homeostasis, right? We've drilled this over and over throughout the year. So with homeostasis, we're maintaining, all of the consistencies throughout the body. So making sure that our body temperature is staying the same, that our water levels are normal, that our pH levels are normal. Oxygen, all of those different things are being balanced throughout the body. And the nervous system has a huge influence on kind of understanding where the body might be lacking, or where something's kind of an overdrive or whatever. So it's the nervous system's job to sense that and make the change. So when we talk about our nervous tissue, okay, so nervous tissue includes neurons and neuroglia. Okay, glia is going to be more in the brain. So we're still going to talk about the different types of glial cells, but just kind of keep in mind that's going to be more with brain, whereas neurons are going to be, more throughout the body. So our nervous tissue, obviously, the main goal is to transmit a nerve impulse. All right. And like I said, think back to neuromuscular junction. So when we're transmitting a nerve impulse, I think you guys can see my cursor. So what you're going to see is the ends here, your axon terminals. At the very other end, if I had another picture of it connecting, your dendrites, which would be this part up here, would be right here. Okay, and they're not going to touch. You're still going to have that synaptic cleft. And that synaptic cleft is going to allow for all of those neurotransmitters to flow. So just like acetylcholine was flowing when we talked about the neuromuscular junction, in this case, we're going to be talking about serotonin, we're going to be talking about dopamine and any of the other types of neurotransmitters that, will be going throughout the body to send different thoughts and different actions and things like that. So that would be the third bullet point, to connect to other cells and eventually cause a response. So neuron characteristics, a neuron is a nerve cell. They require a ton of oxygen and they require a ton of glucose. Okay, they need a lot of energy. It makes sense that they need oxygen, right? If you've ever watched any medical show out there and somebody's been without oxygen for 30 seconds to up to 5 minutes, you're probably looking at least some deficiencies with the brain, if not completely brain dead and that kind of thing. So we need oxygen excessively with these types of cells. Like I kind of mentioned on the previous slide, the entire purpose of them is to receive and process whatever the input is and then produce a response. And that can actually happen on just a singular neuron level. So my signal is going to come in to my dendrites. Okay. The cell body is going to kind of process that and it's going to send the signal down my axon to my axon terminals. Okay. The bottom part of my neuron here. And that's going to send the signal on to the next. So the dendrite receives, and the axon is going to elicit the response. Okay, it's going to continue the signal on to the next cell. So it's going to continually transmit those impulses from neuron to neuron. So when we look at these structures, just to kind of break it down a little bit, so the dendrite, like I said, literally gets its name because it looks like tree branches, and dendro means trees. So this part here is where the stimulus is coming in, right? So there would be axons that would be kind of connecting with the dendrites here on all of the sides. Then you have the inside section here that's got the nucleus. So this is the cell body. It's also called the neurosoma, right? Soma means body and neuro means nerve, right? So this is the cell body of your neuron. So this is kind of where the magic happens. This is where it processes what's going on, right? And you can see in this, you got a very large purple nucleus there for you to look at. Then you have the axon, okay? And it's this entire kind of tail that goes down to these little branches that come off. So the axon itself is one very large bundle of fibers, okay, and that it splits off. So this is going to transmit a stimulus to a muscle, to an organ, to either another neuron, if it's, continuing the path, wherever it needs to go. And you'll notice these little purple things here, okay, on the side. This is myelin. And depending on where in the body your nerve is, it's going to have these little myelin sheaths that go over it. And the whole purpose of that is to actually speed up a reaction. And we'll talk about some of the diseases that are associated with not having myelin and what that can do to the body a little bit